mann som vecklar bröd och snusbullar.
Hello everyone, hello world, it's Shawna with DisruptApps once again, and moving right along with our random content generator series. In the last video, I went over and we talked about evolutionary linguistics, and I went from basic caveman grunts and how we humans used sound to represent concepts and ideas so we could survive. And we talked about internal and external points of reference, why we have the if and conditional statements about the future tense and past tense, because humans as a biological organism, we are a cause and effect machine, and we know that there is a future and a past, unlike most other animals out there. So that was the need for the conditionals, and of course you can watch that video and go more in depth about it, but this is all, and then knowing that, we understand why we have the different verb tenses out there. And just finishing up here, I went over like really rudimentary grammatical structures, coming to like what we consider a refined grammatically correct structure that we speak with today. And I encourage you to go watch that video if you're interested in evolutionary linguistics. And this lays a foundation for language modeling, and also what we're going to be doing in this random content generator application. And so today we're going to be doing some more JavaScript coding. And in this series, I've laid out a lot of things from basic JavaScript to variables to functions. And today I need to talk about a concept of using functions within functions, and we'll be using a lot of functions within functions with the random content generator application that I built. So understanding functions within functions, that will be a great concept for you to know, because it will help you write maintainable and modular code, and it makes life a lot easier. We'll be using a lot of functions within functions on the random content generation application. And I will also talk about nested functions, and I will touch on callbacks. And those are always fun, but I think if you just follow the functions with functions, you'll understand callbacks pretty easily afterward. But I'll just introduce you to a term called callback hell, and that's something people talk about in JavaScript. First of all, I need to close that up there. Nope. And then I need to comment here so we have a space to work. All right. So the first thing I want to do is I want to name a function. And sticking with the C type of nomenclature, I'm just going to use main function. Okay. And so if you're familiar with like C or C++ or something, you'll know that we have a main, and that is the function from which that program executes and is compiled from, right? But just for our purposes in learning, we're going to say the main function, that is the only one that's going to be invoked or called or executed, right? So let's go ahead and make sure it works. Test fire main function. Okay, let me see, make sure I got, okay, I need to put the random cont gen.js into our script. So I got to come in here into our head tag and then type in rand cont gen.js. Right, Control S to save the changes, and then we gotta come over here and then we need to call the main function. We need to invoke it. Okay, so Control S to save, Control S to save, come to our page, hit refresh, and it says test fire main function, so we know it works. And actually I want to be into the console, because we'll be working in the console, and I need to come and comment out in nav menu render scripts. I need to I need to comment out that console and make sure that all the consoles aren't going to be popping up. Control S to save, refresh. We know it's working. Okay, good. So we'll come back to our ramcont.gen.js. We know our main function is working, and we're going to be working in the console log for this. All right, so this one is always going to fire, right? So what we want to do, what I want to talk about first, is calling another function inside the main function. So far we've just been writing stuff like an alert, or we've been consoling out texts or template strings and things like that within a function. But the way JavaScript and programming languages are is you can declare another function outside. We'll say function test _00, and then we will make the appropriate syntax. Okay, so we have our test _00 function, and let's do a console.log, golly, and we will say test _00 fired. Okay, hit Control S and let's see what happens. Well, I don't think anything should happen, right? Because nothing's declared and we're not alerting anymore. So even though main function is being called, it's not happening, right? So what we can do, if you want to use main function, if you want to call or invoke this test function, all you have to do is come in here, copy it, and then paste it, and Control S to save, and let's see what happens. Come back to our page and console log, refresh. Hey, test _00 fired. So that's really cool, because you can make different functions out here, and that makes your code easier to read. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go ahead and put this here just to show you how it makes modularity awesome and easy to control. Test _00 fired and _01 fired. And this will come in really handy when you're making really complex applications or websites. So what happens if we come down here and paste everything below calling the main function? Well, let's see what happens. Well, it still works, right? And then what happens if you take the main function and paste it below all this stuff? Well, hey, that works too. So the way the JavaScript engine, the way that browsers execute the JavaScript code, it's like if you've done C and C++, you know that the standard practice is always to put your functions below. And with the case with JavaScript, it doesn't matter where it is, but where the functions are, it'll still work. But with the scope, as we talked about with variable scope, that still does matter. So you'll need to keep in mind your variable scope. So seeing this here, this is how you can call a function, the main function, and call other functions, external functions, right? Now the next thing I want to talk about are the nested functions. So instead of having external functions here, you can have a nested function inside. And let's just go ahead and cut that and paste it here. Format the code. Okay, Control S to save. Now let's see what happens now. I bet you it's not going to work. Right, it's not going to work because you still have to invoke this test01 function. So you have to invoke it down below. and now it's going to work. See? And when you develop your code and when you plan out your web applications or your websites or your JavaScript, you really should determine how best for you and the readability, and for people who may want to come in and look at your code, who might have to come in and fix it after you depart. You have to take into considerations what's going to work best for you. Okay, so this is another method. So a callback is when you invoke a function through an argument of another function. And these are always fun to deal with. I don't personally use them. I don't set out to use them. I use them when I do timing stuff, JavaScript timeouts and timing intervals, and when I assign event listeners to HTML. All right, so let's go ahead and do a callback example, a really simple one. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and comment out test_01, and then we'll come in here and then we'll say callback. Okay, and then what we'll come in here and we'll do is we'll make a callback function. So whatever is in the argument is going to execute in here, and this gets into something called asynchronous JavaScript, but I won't go too deep in that. But it just basically means an asynchronous call won't execute until everything else before it has been completed. And so let's go ahead, and to complete the callback, down here we have to pass the argument, right? So we don't put callback down here. We're going to execute the function. So what we'll do is you'll just put test_01, and you don't need to put the parentheses. You just for however and whatever they designed it in JavaScript, you can just pass in the name, right? So let's hit Control S, and if everything worked right, we should get test00 firing, and then this is going to execute the callback, which is here, and that's going to go down here, and it's going to grab the argument, which is going to be test_01 function. So if everything works right, we're going to get this up here, the console log, and then we'll get this here, console log. So come back to our page, we'll hit refresh, and test_00 fired, test_01 fired. Callbacks are intermediate to advanced JavaScript, and they can come in handy. You'll need to understand the concept of callbacks for when you deal with things like the JavaScript time intervals and timeouts, set intervals, the timing functions in JavaScript. The other time that I use callbacks a lot and heavily is when I assign event listeners to my HTML elements like buttons. So I've touched on functions within functions, nested functions, and callbacks. And for the random content generator application I made, I use functions within functions quite a bit, and I think I have a few nested functions. So with that, I'm going to get some more coffee and start editing this video, and I will see you later. Bye bye.